yesterday. What a gift from the Catholic Church. They like created their own version of Buddy Christ called Loose. And this is the closest chance I'll ever have to making like a Merchant Ivory period piece type movie. So movie lovers recognize and smell their own. And so this movie plays like a love letter to movie lovers by a movie lover. I mean, honestly, this is a flick that's like, boy, do I love young Kevin Smith. He was so look at his friends. They like him too. So I got very, very lucky with him. God damn, if he did not improve that movie, I would say 50%. I read some reviews on 430 Movie that like made me roll a tear where I felt so fucking sick. That's right. 430 Movie allows me to make MooseJaws where people go like, all right, we'll give him one. Let him go.
Talk about 430 Movie, I just wanted to quickly give sort of a congratulations, a little bit of a pat on the back, because we have Dogma back. It's back in your sphere now, I believe.
Yeah, next year, 2025, ADA, my friend, all Dogma action. It's almost completely signed, sealed, delivered. We're inches away. This is why Jordan, Jason Muse's wife, who runs our company, is always like, shut up. About it. It's not, we're not done. And I'm like, I know, but we're so close. So yeah, next year is going to be like, given the opportunity, which it sounds like I'm going to have, take it out on tour, steelbook, just bringing it back to the world. And it's not like it's gone anywhere. You could always watch it on YouTube. Yeah. It just wasn't on any streaming services and stuff. So time is beautiful. We're right now, what is it, October 29th? 2 weeks from now, I think, is the 25th anniversary of when Dogma hit theaters and stuff. So I'm excited. And then this morning I woke up and I saw, I guess it was yesterday, what a gift from the Catholic Church. They like created their own version of Buddy Christ called Loose, which I was like, I predicted a thing. I'm like the Simpsons. Like, oh my God, I never thought I'd be that guy.
I love that. So, Kevin, first of all, I've been a massive fan for a good long years, ever since back in the day, getting to see Clerks. And Clerks completely rewired my way of thinking when it came to movies, talky talk movies, dialogue movies. It was something that at my young age I wasn't massively into. And then all of a sudden, there was this way in. It was a video shop. I worked in a video shop. The guy directing it worked in a video shop. You knew everything about it. But now here we are, a good 30 years later into your career. We've had more hits than misses. We've had some absolutely storming films from you, but now we've got 430 Movie, which is just a love letter, not just to cinema, not just to your personal story, but all of our personal stories. Why now for 430 Movie? What made you want to make this movie now?
I wish I could be like, well, I'm at that stage in my life where I'm looking back, but like I've been looking back since the first movie. I was looking back at working at the convenience store, which had just happened months ago. So I'm constantly in a state of nostalgia. So it wasn't that. Me and my friends bought the movie theater that we grew up going to when we were kids in the town next to my hometown. I grew up in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey, had this Atlantic Twin Cinema that we went to all the time when we were kids. And it had become a 5-screener, the Atlantic Movie House, it was called. And they were going to shut it down after like 100 years. Like COVID killed a lot of movie theaters. This was going to be one of them as well. And so me and my friends kind of jumped in and said, if we can't let it go, this is the theater we grew up in, and saved it, called it Smodcastle Cinemas now. We've been in business for 3 years. So the day that I knew this was all happening, that we were like, oh my God, we're going to buy the movie theater, is when I started thinking about the 430 Movie. When I was like, well, wait a second, man, because I've been in that movie theater and nothing had changed since I had been in it as a kid. The same seats that I sat in watching Friday the 13th Part 2 way back in the day, same seats are there today. So I was like, as long as we point a camera anywhere within these theater walls, it's the 80s. And this is the closest chance I'll ever have to making like a Merchant Ivory period piece type movie. So let me see if this is possible. And I started thinking about like, okay, if you were doing a movie in a movie theater, naturally, because of Clerks, it's like, well, do ushers, man. But I didn't work at a movie theater, and that to
Yeah.
me would feel like stolen valor telling that story and stuff. But I've been in many movie theaters in seats, and that's when I started being like, all right, tell a story about like how the time in your life that led to where you are now. Like you were a kid obsessed with movies who would go to a multiplex for the first matinee show, be dropped off by your parents with like $5, and then come back and pick you up 12 hours later because they knew that you were going to just jump from movie to movie to movie. Like that was your love language, as they say nowadays. That was your passion. And so I went back and felt like, all right, I'm going to tell the story of my first date with my high school girlfriend, which took place at the movie theater. And if that's 1986, then we just got to make sure anytime we turn the camera outside the movie theater,
Yeah.
like we don't see modern cars or something like that. It became honestly, it wasn't even like this is a story I was moved to tell. Eventually I was, of course, while I was writing it, but initially it was born out of opportunity, kind of like Clerks, where it's like, well, I got a location, what if I built a whole movie in this bitch? Same thing. I was like, well, I got a movie theater, what if I built a whole movie theater? And just like with Clerks, I went very personal. Like, Clerks, I was like, all right, I'm gonna rip from my own life. There, I at least worked at the convenience store. Here, it was more about I'm going to rip from those days where this was the most important thing in the world, where like waking up, hanging out with your friends, finding your first love, keep it going to see the same movie again and again and again as a gateway to go see other brand new movies. Being the internet and pop culture enthusiast before all that stuff really kind of began. And so it wasn't like I want to salute those days. It was more just like, well, this seems like the perfect time to tell that story. Like everything lines up correctly. So I wish it was like, man, I've been nursing this forever. I mean, in fact, I have been nursing it forever, but not knowledgeably. I was never
It's your
like,
story.
I'm going to get to it. Just like everything else pulls from my own story. So what starts as opportunity turns into like this very sweet movie that wears its heart on its sleeve and has probably withstood a critical gauntlet better than anything I've done in recent memory. And I get it. Like this is a movie that appeals to movie enthusiasts, because you could see yourself in this flick. I don't care how old you are, even if you grew up in a generation that wasn't like mine, where like you grew up on your phone ticking and talking as opposed to like going to the multiplex. Movie lovers recognize and smell their own. And so this movie plays like a love letter to movie lovers by a movie lover. I mean, honestly, this is a flick that's like, boy, do I love young Kevin Smith. He was so look at his friends. They like him too. And that girl, she likes him. It really is me celebrating somebody who is very dear to me. Young Kevin Smith launched my career, for heaven's sakes. Like, I'm not that guy anymore. I'm 30 years in. But the kind of courage to believe in oneself, like I think I can make a movie, even though I never did before. I love that kid, man. Like, so it was nice to kind of be like, hey, here's a movie about the kid who made Clerks. Never would have imagined in a million years that a movie would be made about him in any way, shape, or form, unless he made it himself, which stands to reason because this one was made by himself as well.
And honestly, I find this movie to be, I'll be completely honest with you. When I put my review out for the 4:30 movie, I did mention that the last few movies that you'd released, like, were a little bit like they weren't necessarily for me anymore. And then this one came along, and I couldn't wait to see you dive into this coming of age kind of drama. And how is he going to do this? Fast Times, kind of Dazed and Confused, John Hughes sort of movie. How's Kevin Smith going to do this? It's not necessarily your wheelhouse as such. So I was just amazed at how good it was. And a lot of that is down to the crew you bring in. You bring in a fantastic crew, the likes of your Skull, Bear McCreary. Wow, unbelievable.
What a gift, right?
So
like, and I remember when I reached out to Bear, I was just like, Bear, like, you got a chance to be the sixth lead in the movie.
Yeah.
We got the four kids and we got Ken, but Score could honestly like be a character in this movie. And he lobbied for the flick. even before, you know, he knew what the script was. He'd reached out to me. We'd worked together on Masters of the Universe. And he was like, "Are you doing an 80s movie?" And I was like, "I am." He's like, "You read that online?" He's like, "Yeah, I've always wanted to do an 80s movie score. I have one in me. Can I do it?" And I was like, "I mean,
Man.
heavens, by all means, let me send you the script." And when he read the script, he was like, "This is exactly what I'm thinking." So I got very, very lucky with him. He really, like him, you know, music always elevates a movie, but goddamn, if he did not improve that movie, I would say 50%. Like, you take that movie and remove that Bear McCreary score, you know, it's very amateurish. That's what we showed Sundance, and Sundance passed on the movie. Like, and that hurt my fucking feelings, man, to be honest. Like, you know, and I'm not mad at him or anything like that. I'm lucky that I ever got into Sundance. But here I was, like, this is the 30th anniversary of Clerks being at Sundance. And I got this movie about people that love movies at a movie theater. Oh my God, how is it not going to play at Sundance? And Sundance is like, very easily, we're not going to program it. And I
Oh wow.
remember, because of that, the movie was all done, but wasn't going to be coming out for a few months. I started distancing myself from the flick. You know, I started busying myself with other things and trying not to think about it, because I was like, oh, maybe it sucks. Like, if Sundance
No.
want it, maybe it's got nothing. And here's my thing. I was always worried about this flick because I was like, it's got no edge. Nobody curses. Nobody's saying anything new. Nobody's saying anything revolutionary. Nobody's saying anything even edgy, funny, and stuff like that. And I was like, it's soft. And I'd made this movie when I got out of the nut house. So I was like, maybe it's as fragile as I am when I got out of the nut house and stuff. So I was already like cautious of this movie and stuff because it was so hard on its sleeve. And when Sundance was like, yeah, it ain't for us, I was like, my God, I have lost it. I do suck. The internet's right. And it wasn't until the movie came out and y'all started writing about it, man.
Yeah.
And like, that's where I was like, honestly, I'm not going to lie. And, you know, I've over 30 years, I've had a relationship that goes up and down with critics and stuff. I read some reviews on 430 movie that like made me roll a tear, where I felt so fucking seen, where I was like, they got it. But I mean, how could you not get it? This movie is not difficult. Like, it's very straightforward, but it goes right to this. And I'm used to working from here and trying, you know, even though the humor can be juvenile and stuff, it's precisely, you know, kind of distributed to elicit the effect you want, get laughs you want and stuff. This one felt like, all right, every trick arrow I could pull out of my quiver is not going to be useful here. I just have to play longbow. And it turned out to be like a really good decision, because that's how people received the movie. They're like, I'm glad it's got no edge, man.
Well,
like, I'm glad it's soft and approachable, because it feels like a heart. Like, the whole movie just feels like this shit that kids do on the internet.
well, that's the thing, you know. You're saying that you're not really saying anything new. Like, the movie's not really saying anything new. It doesn't really have any edge. But the thing is, anybody who's been with Kevin Smith in this filmmaking journey, anybody who's watched all of your movies, this is you saying something new to us, and that's where my heart came from. It was just sort of like, man, the man is speaking to me again, and it's been a little while since you've done that, man. So
I like that. I like that. I like the way you put that. That's very cool, man.
So honestly, and I want to talk a little bit about your cast, because what a cast you have here, and two in particular I want to start with first. We know how your lead actor came into the movie. It's pretty obvious how he scored that role, how he scored that role.
As we crudely say around here, because he came into my daughter, I guess. That's how I met Austin.
I like
He's
it.
dating
I
Harley
like
for 5 years.
But Sienna, I saw her in a Netflix show, No Good Nick, and she's absolutely phenomenal in that show. She's so good in that show. So it's obvious why you would pick her for this. But how did she come onto the movie? Was it a case of like you saw her in that, or you saw her in something else?
No, we had this wonderful casting director, and I rarely work with casting folks because generally I always write for people I know. That's why you see the same faces show up all the time, and it's easier process for the writer if you know who's going to say the things right to their voice. So this, I was like, I don't know any teenagers. You know, even the teenager that I used to know is now in her fucking 20s, my kid. So I can't write to anybody. So when I wrote these parts, like I honestly, the first draft, I was writing the Brian David part, the lead, for Harley to play. I was like, Yentl this shit. Be a girl playing a boy. She's like, you're out of your fucking mind. So after that, I was like, all right, well, Austin. So I had a vision for Brian David. I knew who my Brian David would be. Everyone else, I was like, we're going to need to cast this. So we went to Amy Renee, who is absolutely excellent, man. She knows young Hollywood, young business. She just knows all the faces. And my kids, right away, Harley and Austin were like, Amy Renee, we've auditioned for her many times. She's great. So Amy sent me a bunch of really strong melodies. And each one, definitely could have done the job and then some. But Sienna, number one, was the youngest. And so naturally when and I think she'd already gone to 1 year of NYU. So she's like 18. So it wasn't like we can't shoot where they're young, but everyone else was like in their mid to late 20s and stuff. But honestly, she looks very much like the character, the human being the character is based on, Kim Locker, my high school girlfriend, and Sienna, like the look alike when they were kids. So right away when I saw her, I was like, oh my God, she has that youthful exuberance of like a young Kim Lochran. And then when I heard her read, she's pitch perfect. Like, just the like some of the melodies were very, I'm in charge of the conversation, which is very modern, which makes sense. Sienna came at it from a kind of 1986, like I know I'm smart. And I know I'm probably more clever than this guy, but I'm going to give him a shot because I think I see his heart. That communicated in her audition right away, where it was just like, man, she feels, for lack of a better description, period, like she could have been one of us in the 80s and stuff. And so then I said, can we see one more? Like everyone auditioned with the same scenes. So I was like, give her these scenes. And she absolutely nailed it. And so we got to Zoom her and Austin together because we didn't have a lot of money and stuff. So, and she lives in Hawaii. So we got to like do a reading with those two via Zoom for the first time about, 2-3 weeks out from when we started shooting. And you could see it even on Zoom. It's like, oh man, I got chemistry. And so, those kids, they don't see each other in real life in the movie until like the third act. Like it opens with this phone call between them, but they're in two different locations and like, they were off camera for each other, but you didn't get to see that chemistry, but you sure feel it on the phone, man. And she can make it work. I mean, honestly, the highest compliment I could pay Sienna is that you would stay on the phone with her for 7 minutes in the modern era. Nobody would ever do that in this day and age. Like nobody gets on the phone. They'd rather text, but you can have a whole conversation with her, man. It plays through in her personality and came out in the performance. She was an absolute gift, in terms of melody. It's like you run the risk of having her be fetishized or put on a pedestal or something. And she's talked about more than the shark in Jaws in advance of his entry into the film. Everyone's like, Melody Barnegat. So, having her live up to not just like who he saw she was, but also be a human being. Like there's moments where she's not like ethereal perfection. Like, when she echoes her mom, when she's like, you're so full of shit, your eyes are brown, shit like that, like where she kind of, is real, not trying to be some kind of picture perfect version of herself. And Sienna captured that absolutely.
Well, I've got one more question about the film before I let you go. I've taken up a bit of your time, and I'm sure you've got a million more of these things to do. But honestly, Kevin, first of all, everybody, please do check out 4:30 movie. This is a director who is absolutely just back at the ultimate peak. I think 4:30 movie could be right up there with one of your best. I still think
you're so sweet, but you watch the next movie I make, stupid as fuck, and everyone will be like, he dropped the ball again.
Yeah, but you've earned a little bit of grace.
Now. That's right. 4:30 movie allows me to make MooseJaws, where people go like, all right, we'll give him one, let him do it.
I'd watch MooseJaws. But yeah, everybody, please check this out. It's out now on digital and everything like that. 4:30 movie, but there is a poster in this movie, and there is a mid-credits scene. Is this a spiritual prequel?
Honestly, we didn't intend it to be, but you can't not be when so much of my personal life and my personal story was a big part of the Clerks story.
Yeah.
So aside from Clerks just being like, hey, this is black and white movie where they talk dirty and it's in a convenience store, it's pretty fucking funny, is like, oh, this guy like began his career because he worked in that convenience store and he sold his comic book collection and he made the movie for like 27 grand, maxed out credit cards and blah, blah. So you know, Clerks is a two-part story. It's the movie itself and it's the backstory of how the movie was made. So my backstory, you know, it's you don't even have to be like a Kevin Smith aficionado to know that, like, oh, he worked in that convenience store. You know, that is this big part of that whole thing. So I feel like, you know, going into this, even without saying anything, without having the postscript scene, people would have probably made the connection, like, oh, this is young him. And since he's the guy eventually makes Clerks, like that makes sense. But like, I remember my friend Josh was like, shave out any references to your work. He's like, don't refer. Like at one point, the movie theater was literally called Smodcastle Cinemas. And he was like, don't do that. He's like, don't be self-referential. He's like, that's why you get hit all the time. He's go, if you want to be self-referential in Clerks 3, by all means. He's going, but this one. So like, you know, a Ranger Danger became Astro Blaster, you know, and Smodcastle Cinemas went to being the Atlantic Cinemas and stuff like that. And but then when we were shooting first day, we're around the block from Quick Stop, literally around the block. We wound up, the opening day is in Leonardo and shit. And I'm like, I can't escape this fucking convenience store. Shane, our first AD, is like, we really should do a shot with the kids in front of the convenience store. Mm-hmm. And I was like, we're not going to do that, Shane. We're not going to pander. Like we're gonna like, this movie's going to stand alone and stuff. And so I had a 75-page script, very short, which meant when I was done, I had like a 72-minute movie, you know, and I was like, all right, again, there was no fat, everything I liked, you know, I trimmed out some things, but generally speaking, everything was there. And that's how I shoot. I only really shoot what I need and stuff. And then my producers were like, you're contracted to deliver an over 80-minute movie. And I was like, oh, shit. I was like, well, I don't, all right. I was like, hey, can we shoot a postscript scene with the kids? And I set it up for them. I was like, be a 4-pager and it'll get us to where we need to be. And they were like, all right. And so we were in Los Angeles. We shot the kids in one place. And then we borrowed the shot of the convenience store from the previous film we made and put it in there. We licensed it from Lionsgate and stuff. So it was suggested. And I was like, oh, poo-poo, we can't do that. No. But then when I was like, we need a little more time to stretch this movie out, like, all right, let's go back to where it all began. So it does like kind of hand off. Like I've now watched the 4:30 movie in about 5 theaters with an audience. And it's honestly a delightful experience for me each time, especially considering I introed at the premiere and then came out afterwards, but skipped the premiere because I was like, I can't watch this movie die. Sundance hated it. I'm sure everyone else will. So it wasn't until after the premiere that I actually started fucking with the movie, because like Ernie, one of the producers on the movie and the guy that runs Smodcastle, or Ernie O'Donnell, he's very straightforward, puts everything on Front Street. And so when I came back, I was like, how to play. And he is not the guy to like, you know, fluff it up. He goes, fucking good. And I was like, seriously? And he goes, they were laughing. And I was like, at it? And he goes, with it, whole time. So it worked out, man. And when I've seen it with the audience and that moment plays, and, you know, the audience who sticks around is still there, it gives applause and shit like that. And lots of like, oh, and blah, blah, blah. I gotta be honest with you. Like, I felt like, oh shit, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't the plan, but you could literally now go watch Clerks and it would dovetail pretty nicely, like a good double feature. And I think as we say it out loud, I'm fucking doing it. I was like, why am I giving out good ideas? We're going to do it at Smodcastle Cinemas. A really wonderful double feature would be 4:30 movie immediately followed by Clerks. Even though they're separated by 30 years, they really do complement one another. You're right. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, but the overdue fees on dental school are going to be absolutely terrible.
Yeah, to say the least. There's also, did you see the like Bible camp poster too? Those made it through the gauntlet, where I was like,
But that's the thing, just those little tiny things for the diehards.
Yeah.
Kevin, thank you so much for doing this. Everybody who's watching this, listening to this, please do check out 4:30 movie. You're going to absolutely love it. It got 5 stars from me. I absolutely think this is one of your best, if not, you know, it's definitely top 3 for me. Absolutely.
That means the world. Such a pleasure, man. Let's do it again.